despite the fact that those states were Orthodox Christian states, and served as the military commanders and leaders of either the Georgian sections of the Persian military or as the commanders of entirely Persianate forces. This is the case of King Vakhtang VI. So while he was the king of uh, the kingdom of Kartli, one of those Georgian kingdoms, and grew up Orthodox, at this time he was at least nominally Muslim, and he was called by the name Hussein Qoli, and that was his Persian name, and he was ordered to liberate the town of Shamakhi from the ongoing siege by the Lezgins. However, midway through his way, he was recalled because a number of the bureaucrats were afraid that if King Vakhtang did well in liberating the city, that he might get too much prestige and therefore be able to use those Persian soldiers loyal to him to get more independence for Kartli. Accordingly, Vakhtang VI was held back, and Haji Daoud was successful in leading his Lezgins in Shamakhi to break down the siege. 15,000 Shiites in the city were massacred. A number of Sunnis in the city were also massacred because the Lezgins couldn't tell the difference between who was Shiite and who was Sunni. The town of Shamakhi today is within the borders of the Republic of Azerbaijan and has a majority Shiite population today. Eventually, Haji Daoud's group was cowed into proper behavior, but that would only happen during the early days of Nader Shah, as we're going to talk about. On the Hotaki side, on the Afghan side, it's a little bit more serious. Now, we mentioned that the Georgian kings, right, had been doing this sort of function as vassals, serving in the Persian army, and we see this again. This is another king of Kartli. He was actually king before Vakhtang VI would take that role. And this was George the 11th, or Ghorghin Khan, according to the Persians. And he was made governor of the region of what is today Afghanistan. He was placed in Kandahar, and he was effectively the governor there, the eyes and ears for the Safavid Shah, and he had his own retinue of Georgian soldiers who served him loyally. But many of the Afghans were Sunni, and it was King George the 11th's job to enforce the Shiite hegemony in the region, which of course is very strange considering that he's only a nominal Muslim opposed to believing one. In order to undermine this, there were two major Afghan Pashtun tribes. One is called the Ghilji, and you can see the Ghilji below. The other are the Abdali, which we will discuss more in depth later. The leader of the Ghilji was a nobleman by the name of Mirveis Hotak. You can see him on the left-hand side. And Mirveis managed to convince the Shah to permit him to take a pilgrimage to Mecca. As a Sunni, he experienced no difficulty in getting to Mecca, whereas most Shiite pilgrims would be unable to do so because the Ottoman Empire had a strict ban on Shiites entering the country. But when he was in Mecca, he was able to get a fatwa allowing him to liberate, in his view, the Afghan territorial areas, the Pashtun areas, from Safavid control. He managed to even convince Shah Sultan Hussein that he shouldn't trust King George XI, that King George XI wanted to arrogate more power to himself and was truly a Christian, not a Muslim. So you shouldn't trust him. Mirveis then led his Ghilji tribesmen in a revolt against George XI in 1709 and killed him, as well as killing his Georgian troops. But the revolt wasn't a direct revolt. They had invited the Georgian troops to have dinner with them and then killed them at the dinner table. There were only so many of these elite guards that after once or twice using Georgian armor to pretend that they were Georgians meeting the other Georgian groups. Um,